Welcome back to the 7 Habits. I'm Michael York. So far, we've explored the early lessons, the early habits, which are mostly about, as Dr. Covey describes them, personal vision, personal leadership, and personal management. Understanding that the 7 habits are really about moving from a dependent situation into an independent situation, but ultimately the goal is interdependence. So now we'll talk about the next lesson, the next habit, which is really focused on public victory. So now it's not just personal, it involves other people. And when you look at habit number 4 and the paradigms of interdependence, we're talking about thinking win-win. So now in a public situation, there are other people involved. It's not just about you. It's not just about me. Think win-win. What does that mean exactly? Well, Dr. Covey talks about a short list that involves the emotional bank account and the major deposits that you and I can make into that emotional bank account. Like attending to little things, keeping your commitments, clarifying expectations, showing personal integrity, the laws of love and the laws of life. So what exactly does Dr. Covey mean when he says think win-win? Let me just share a couple of little excerpts from the book. One alternative to win-win is win-lose. That means one person's the winner, the other person's the loser. Negotiations sometimes we think of in this way. Who won? Who lost? But our challenge is to move beyond that to a win-win situation. So we all know what a financial bank account is all about. Dr. Covey talks about making deposits into it, building up a reserve from which we can make withdrawals whenever we need to. An emotional bank account is a metaphor that describes the amount of trust that's been built up in a relationship. It's the feeling of safeness that you might have with another individual in any relationship. So if you or I make deposits into an emotional bank account, keeping commitments, courtesy, kindness, honesty, sincerity, we build up a reserve that when something goes wrong, we have a little equity in the relationship. I'll give you an example. Dr. Covey talks about a situation where having a teenage son, and some normal conversation, something like clean your room, button your shirt, turn down the radio, get a haircut, get a job, take out the trash. Over a period of time, those withdrawals begin to wear thin in a relationship. They far exceed any deposit that dad may have made into a relationship. Now, suppose this son's in the process now of making some important decisions that will affect the rest of his life. Much more important than taking out the trash or getting a haircut. How now do you suppose he responds to any input from the other position in that relationship? That's the emotional bank account that Dr. Covey's talking about. He even gives another example on keeping commitments or just little things. He says, I have another friend, a college professor, who had a terrible relationship with his teenage son. The man's entire life was essentially academic. It was all about work, all about his job, the most important thing in his life. And he felt the son was totally wasting his life by working with his hands instead of working to develop his mind. As a result, he was almost constantly on the boy for little things, lots of withdrawals in that relationship. It just didn't work. The boy perceived these as forms of rejection from his own dad. But one day, Dr. Covey says, I shared with him this principle of making what's important to the other person as important to you as the other person is to you. He took it deeply to heart, engaged his son in a project to build something that was important to him. Gives another example of a dad taking a son who loved baseball on a field trip of sorts over several weeks, visiting several major league parks to see baseball games. When someone asked the dad, is baseball really that important to you? He said, no, but my son is. That's the emotional bank account that we're all depositing into. Because at some point in your life, at some point in a relationship, things don't go exactly the way we want. And those kind of withdrawals can make a huge impact in a negative way if we haven't prepared or built up equity in those relationships. So the emotional bank account, attending to little things, people who are important in your life, keeping those commitments, clarifying expectations, not just yours, but the expectations of others. All those are part of those paradigms of interdependence when we talk about think win-win. So, here's your personal application for this lesson. Think about an upcoming interaction where you'll be attempting to reach an agreement or negotiating a solution. How can you balance courage and consideration to arrive at a win-win situation? Make a list of obstacles that might keep you from applying the win-win principle more often. And identify 3 key relationships in your life. What's the balance in each one regarding the emotional bank account? Write down some specific ways that you could make deposits in each one of those accounts. Then think about a model of win-win. Who do you know, even in difficult situations, that looks for a mutual benefit resolution? I hope this is helpful when you think win-win. For the 7 Habits, I'm Michael York.